In the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob, who had 12 sons. Among them, Joseph was his favorite, for he was born to Jacob in his old age, and was the son of his beloved wife, Rachel. Joseph's brothers, however, grew jealous of him because of their father's favoritism, and their jealousy turned into bitterness and resentment. Joseph was a dreamer, and one night he had a dream that his brothers were binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly his sheaf stood upright, while his brothers' sheaves bowed down to it. When he shared this dream with his brothers, it only fueled their animosity towards him. As if to worsen matters, Joseph had another dream where the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. Even Jacob, though troubled, rebuked Joseph, but kept the matter in mind. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were tending their flocks far away. When his brothers saw him coming from afar, they conspired to kill him. But Reuben, the eldest, intervened, suggesting they throw him into a pit instead. So, when Joseph arrived, they stripped him of his colorful coat, the symbol of his father's love, and cast him into a pit. As they sat down to eat, a caravan of Ishmaelites passed by, and Judah, another brother, suggested they sell Joseph to them as a slave. So, they pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. The Ishmaelites took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite his circumstances, Joseph remained faithful to his God and found favor in Potiphar's sight. He was put in charge of Potiphar's household, and everything prospered under his management. However, Potiphar's wife grew infatuated with Joseph and repeatedly tried to seduce him. But Joseph, being a man of integrity, refused her advances. Angered by his rejection, she falsely accused him of attempting to rape her. Potiphar, believing his wife's lies, had Joseph thrown into prison. Even in prison, Joseph's faith did not waver. He found favor with the prison warden, who put him in charge of all the other prisoners. One day, 2 of Pharaoh's servants, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were imprisoned, each having a troubling dream. Joseph interpreted their dreams, predicting that the cupbearer would be restored to his position, while the baker would be executed. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him and speak to Pharaoh on his behalf once he was restored to his position. Yet, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph for 2 years, until Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams that none of his wise men could interpret. Finally, the cupbearer remembered Joseph and his ability to interpret dreams. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, who recounted his dreams of 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 lean cows and 7 healthy ears of grain being consumed by 7 withered ears. Joseph interpreted the dreams as 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, advising Pharaoh to appoint a wise man to oversee the storing of grain during the years of plenty, to prepare for the famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as the governor of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph oversaw the storing of grain during the years of plenty, and when the famine struck, Egypt was well prepared, while surrounding lands suffered. Back in Canaan, Jacob and his sons were also affected by the famine. Learning that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob sent his sons, including Joseph's brothers, to buy food. When they arrived in Egypt, they stood before Joseph, not recognizing him as their brother. Joseph, however, recognized them, and after putting them through various tests, he revealed his true identity to them, forgiving them for their past actions. He urged them to bring their father and their families to Egypt, where he promised to provide for them during the remaining years of famine. Jacob and his family settled in the land of Goshen, where they prospered under Joseph's care. Joseph's reconciliation with his brothers and his rise from slavery to sovereignty became a testament to God's providence and the power of forgiveness, and thus, the story of Joseph became a beacon of hope and redemption for our generations to come. As time passed, Joseph continued to serve as a wise and just ruler over Egypt, implementing his plans to manage the resources and alleviate the suffering caused by the famine. Under his leadership, Egypt remained prosperous even in the midst of scarcity, and neighboring lands looked to Egypt for sustenance and guidance. Meanwhile, Jacob, now reunited with his beloved son Joseph, lived out his final years in peace and contentment in the land of Goshen. He witnessed the flourishing of his family and the fulfillment of God's promises to him and his ancestors. Before his death, Jacob gathered his sons to bless them and foretell their future. To Joseph, he bestowed a special blessing, acknowledging his favored status among his brothers and prophesying that his descendants would be a fruitful vine by a well, whose branches would run over the wall. Jacob's blessing affirmed Joseph's position as a leader and provider for his family, echoing the dreams Joseph had received in his youth. After Jacob's passing, Joseph continued to uphold his responsibilities with diligence and integrity. His wisdom and foresight guided Egypt through the remaining years of famine and into a period of prosperity. He married and had children of his own, and his family grew and prospered alongside the nation he served. As Joseph grew old, he gathered his family around him and shared his own visions of the future. He spoke of a time when God would visit his people and lead them out of Egypt to the land promised to their forefathers. He instructed his descendants to carry his bones with them when they departed from Egypt, as a sign of their faith and a reminder of the covenant God had made with their ancestors. Joseph's legacy lived on in the hearts and minds of his descendants, who remembered him as a man of great wisdom, compassion, and faith. His story became woven into the fabric of their identity as a people, inspiring them to trust in God's providence and to strive for righteousness in all their endeavors. And so, the story of Joseph from slavery to sovereignty, from betrayal to forgiveness remained a cherished part of the history and faith of the Israelites, a testament to the power of God to bring good out of adversity and to fulfill his promises to those who trust in him. As Joseph's days drew to a close, he continued to govern Egypt with wisdom and fairness. Under his leadership, Egypt enjoyed stability and prosperity, and Joseph's reputation as a just ruler spread far and wide. During this time, Joseph's brothers and their families thrived in the land of Goshen. Under his benevolent care, the bond of brotherhood that had once been fractured by jealousy and betrayal was now restored. Through forgiveness and reconciliation, Joseph's brothers deeply respected him, recognizing the profound change that had occurred within him and marveling at the mercy he had shown them. As Joseph approached the end of his life, he gathered his family together to impart his final words of wisdom and blessing. He recounted the trials and triumphs they had endured together, reminding them of God's faithfulness throughout their journey. Joseph urged his descendants to remain steadfast in their faith, to uphold the values of integrity and compassion that he had modeled for them, and to never forget the covenant God had made with their ancestors. In his last moments, Joseph expressed his trust in God's promises, knowing that his people would one day return to the land of Canaan, as foretold by the patriarchs before him. He made his family swear an oath to carry his bones with them when they departed from Egypt, symbolizing their connection to the land of their forefathers and their hope for the future fulfillment of God's covenant. After Joseph's death, his body was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt, as he had requested. His descendants honored his final wish, preserving his remains for generations to come. Years passed, and the time of Joseph's prophecy drew near. God raised up a new leader, Moses, to deliver the Israelites from bondage in Egypt and lead them on a journey of liberation and redemption. As the Israelites embarked on their exodus from Egypt, they carried Joseph's bones with them, fulfilling the oath they had sworn to their forefather. Joseph's story did not end with his death, but lived on as a source of inspiration and guidance for future generations. His legacy of forgiveness, reconciliation, and unwavering faith in God's promises continued to shape the identity and destiny of the people of Israel, serving as a reminder of the enduring power of God's providence in the lives of those who trust in him.